Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to welcome you to the 2024 CU Boulder Disability Symposium, and I'm so happy to welcome you to our presentation today at 12:30, Bind It Together, a medical self-advocacy. My name is Liz Novosel, and I am a librarian here at CU Boulder. I am a white female with blue eyes and graying brown shoulder-length hair that is in a ponytail. I'm wearing a red t-shirt and I use she, her pronouns. The presenters for this session are Sonja Benton and Ray Groshan. Sonja Benton is the program manager in the Pride office here on the CU Boulder campus, which is situated within the Center for Inclusion and Social Change. They use they and aya pronouns. Ray Groshan, I'm sorry if I'm saying your last name wrong, please correct, is a graduate student in the Computational Linguistics Professional Master's Program and uses he, they pronouns. Before we get started with the session, I wanted to tell you that the University of Colorado Boulder is hosting the Disability Symposium to acknowledge that more work must be done to improve inclusion of persons with disabilities on the Boulder campus. We believe that efforts to improve inclusion must focus on students, staff, and faculty, and that it is very important to listen to the voices of people who identify as disabled in our campus community. We can collectively do better. In the 2021 CU Boulder Campus Climate Survey Report, which was released in April of 2022, we found that 44% of undergraduate students and 47% of graduate students reported experiencing incivility in the prior 12 months. For students with disabilities, these numbers climbed to 54% and 62% respectively. We hope that the symposium will inspire campus-wide conversations on how each of us can contribute to improving inclusion on campus and improve support for persons with disabilities. Before I hand this session over to our speakers today, the symposium organizers would also like to take a moment to issue a land acknowledgement. The University of Colorado Boulder, Colorado's flagship university, honors and recognizes the many contributions of Indigenous peoples in our state. CU Boulder acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, and many other Native American nations. Sorry, I'm really not with it today. Their forced removal from these territories has caused devastating and lasting impacts. And while the University of Colorado Boulder can never undo or rectify the devastation wrought on Indigenous peoples, we commit to improving and enhancing engagement with Indigenous peoples and issues locally and globally. And we'll do this by recognizing and amplifying the voices of Indigenous CU Boulder students, staff, and faculty and their work, educating, conducting research, and supporting student success and integration with Indigenous knowledge, and consulting, engaging, and working collaboratively with tribal nations to enhance our ability to provide access and culturally sensitive support to recruit, retain, and graduate Native American students in a climate that is inclusive and respectful. So thank you, and now I'm going to hand over the presentation to our speakers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. I'm going to go ahead and begin for us with a brief visual description of myself, and then I'll let Ray do theirs. I am Sonja. I use they and AU pronouns, and I have short-ish brown curly hair, shoulder length. I am wearing red. I have very pale skin, and I'm wearing dark lipstick and a gray glasses frame.
Hi everyone, I'm Ray. I use he, they pronouns, but mostly he. I am a white transmasc individual. I have tortoiseshell glasses, my loops in, which you might see me fidgeting with. I have short brown hair, blue eyes, and am wearing like a paisley button up over a gray shirt today.
Some basic statistics as to why we're doing this. Specifically, I work with LGBTQ plus students And as you might have noticed, Ray introduces themselves as part of this population, as am I. And one of the things that we know is that there is a huge overlap between LGBTQ plus identified individuals and disability. You can see some of the statistics on this screen here. I'm going to go through these a little fast because I don't want us to do it for the majority of our time here today. But effectively, about a third of LGBTQ plus adults report on surveys being disabled, right? Which we know is significantly less than the actual population that likely are. Partially because we see disability and LGBTQ plus status being underreported on every single survey throughout really all of history. And then that number jumps up if you are trans in any way, shape, or form under that umbrella and disabled to about 52%. Again, probably a little bit low. So we know that these communities overlap a fair bit. We also know that those with racial and ethnic minoritized identities or marginalized identities also experience more disability than their white counterparts. So, sorry, as I choke on myself. So all of that is to say that effectively we have a need for advocacy among not just disabled people, but multiply marginalized disabled people. And that's kind of the lens that we're going to be bringing here today. I've just dropped that Google Drive folder link in the chat. Please let me know if it doesn't work. But this just has a number of different pieces that might be helpful for you in creating what we are going to do today. Perfect. Thank you. It does work.
Reloading it. So I updated it a little bit earlier today.
Should be full. Thank you. And I'm seeing in the chat it works. So we are so excited. Great. Awesome. And please feel free to share this with whomever else in your life you think might find it useful. None of this is stuff that I am interested in gatekeeping access to in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot. Yeah, it's overwhelming. So if you need a minute, let us know.
There's 2 folders in the binder sheet section that they're both from Etsy. So if you are interested in finding your own resources or like your own, like if you want like a specific template, check out Etsy. There's a lot of creators who make them. I think both of us kind of chose, we both put our individual ones that we use in our binders. And I don't know about yours, but mine's pretty minimalistic.
Mine
So
is
if you like
minimal.
something more maximalistic.
It has some leaves. I recommend minimal just because otherwise it can get really aggressive. This is kind of what that looks like in person. I know you can't read it on our screen, but that's kind of part of the point. I am going to go ahead and stop sharing here briefly, just so then when we hold up objects, it's a little bit clearer. I'm gonna pin this so I can actually see what we're doing. Awesome. So kind of quick piece here. This is the point of the workshop, and I'm holding mine up. Ray can hold theirs up.
Mine's a little bit bulky.
Which is the idea of like creating a medical binder as a helpful tool or jumping off point for learning how to advocate for yourself in these types of scenarios, especially as a disabled person who might have a lot more information to keep track of than the average person going to a doctor's appointment. And why we wanted to focus on this was because we wanted to focus on like a thing that you could actually go and make right after this, which is part of why we have all of those documents and way too many documents, honestly. I do not use everything. Ray does not use everything. We have overlap, but all of it is optional. It's what's helpful for you. This is a tool for you to use to advocate for yourself.
And one important thing to know about the medical binder is that it's kind of always a work in progress. You know, you'll have more appointments and you'll want to update it. Maybe you'll realize that a section is missing something or you don't need something in it. So like, I know that there's a few parts of mine that I need to update currently. So be kind to yourself. It's not going to be perfect immediately, and it's always going to be kind of in flux. It's meant to be there as a resource to kind of help you. For me, it helps a lot with confidence. Going into an appointment, knowing what I want to talk about, Um, having information in front of me, it just puts me at ease. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, it is really a tool for yourself. I will say this too, my partners have also used it if it's been an emergency situation and they need to like inform the ER about allergies I have. My parents have used it in similar ways. So it's also helpful if you foresee that being a possibility for you. For example, I have a condition where I just faint sometimes. So having a thing with me that tells people what to do in that scenario and how to best care for me is helpful in ways that like medical bracelets really can't get into in that same sort of way, or ways in which like a medical card in your wallet maybe isn't as complete, right? So having it accessible to the people that you see regularly. So you'll notice that I'm in my office on campus right now, and the binder is usually here with me. It is also at my home when I go home. It travels in my work bag with me, which is annoying, but acceptable. And then it also travels on trips with me a lot of the time, which can be frustrating. I also have a slightly more condensed version of it, but it is there for those kinds of purposes. However, using these in ways that feels helpful for you is sort of the point, right? Not following necessarily my model, but following whatever model works for you best, and that might be a learning process. Oftentimes, I mostly use it honestly to take notes during doctor's appointments, or to remember what exactly tests I've had done when I'm switching specialists, because I can't remember them. It's beyond me.
Yeah, mine is also kind of like an organization tool of like, I have a little section here with all of my imaging discs that I force every place that takes images of me to burn for me. You know, there's my interest in this actually like started from an emergent situation where my mom did not know a whole lot and had to kind of piece things together. And this would have been super helpful in that situation. I don't know where I was going with that.
I think that's a solid statement. But yeah, a couple other pieces here. Kind of a reminder in this piece is that we're going to be talking about advocacy and that looks different and hard depending on the different identities you hold. I know multiple people that have the same medical conditions I do, but that get wildly different care just based on who they are walking into the room as, right? So keeping in mind, right, especially when I go back to the slides and share some quick self-advocacy and assertiveness skills, that these things will work less well the more marginalized you appear, right? The straighter, cisgender, or whiter you look, the better these things will work. I am half Mexican for those who don't know me, so and I have sisters, neither of whom are not fully white. And so even though we have the same genetics and two of us have the same condition, the experiences we have differ very wildly because I have Mexican heritage that is required in some ways for me to disclose because of my paternal history that my sisters don't, right? So keeping that in mind, that these are not one size fits all. These are things to cherry pick as you find work for you. Typically, you will have to be less aggressive and less assertive the further away from white normative you look or seem to be. And that is true for trans and non-binary identities as well.
From I can talk from like a little bit of like classism experience too, because that also applies. I have noticed like a significant shift in how doctors treat me. 5 years ago, I was a retail manager. Now I'm a grad student, but I'm also a software engineer. And so like being in academia, being a software engineer, I get treated a lot differently. If I bring up ideas or thoughts, those are taken more seriously than they were 5 years ago. Granted, that could also be aging, being young and disabled, having chronic pain. And at the time I was cis presenting as a woman, like those all compound too. So yeah, intersectionality is really important to keep in mind here, and it will not be a one size fits all. Yeah.
I thought I might have heard some murmurings. Do people have questions or thoughts, things they'd like to share?
Hello.
Hi.
The configuration of your binder, how thick is it?
Honestly, it really ranges for me because I only keep what's relevant in it. Mine never gets any thicker than it is right now. Because this is the maximum amount of paper I am willing to carry around with me.
Mine is this, but mine probably needs debulked. It has some really long lab tests in here, like a month-long heart monitor, and a lot of surgical notes that some might be like copies. So yeah, that's part of like the process too, is like, do I really need this? I printed off everything that I thought was relevant for diagnosis. But yeah,
Yeah,
highly personalized.
I would say like this is the thickest mine ever is. You can kind of see it slightly better from here. This is including like a little pouch for discs. This is including notes pages. This is including articles I have yet to read on the condition that have just come out. This is including like probably slightly more than I really truly need in it. Because you have to go through and just cut things down regularly. I keep only like my most recent couple of doctor's appointments and then the really important documentation, so like diagnosis notes, things like that. For the most part, you can probably get away with something this thin. My travel one, because I have a mini travel one because I'm a very type A personality. I don't believe in that classification, but it works when I'm describing myself, is really thin. It's maybe like 20 pages max, because if I'm traveling, I do not have the space, or honestly, the bone strength to lift paper up high in the airplane. So it needs to be much smaller. So I have seen them ranging from like that 20 pages or less, even down to 10. Some people can get it really, really concise, to like things, we'll say 3 or 4 times as thick as this. I think honestly, don't go thicker, especially in the beginning. It will feel like you should have everything. I very rarely use most of what is in my binder, to be honest with you. I probably use maybe a third regularly. That's not the majority.
Like, I could quickly cover what my binder is structured as. Obviously personalized, right? But you can kind of decide what's important for you. Things I would recommend is like personal information. I have my insurance card, contact list, my medications, allergies, that sort of thing. And then I have mine broken down. You can kind of see tabs by condition. You know, you can change like the structure for how what works for you, but I kind of have everything structured under like, okay, let's have everything that's related to my brain injury under this one. I don't have visit notes in mine. I just have testing ones. Yeah.
I'm writing down kind of in the chat, kind of the list of minimum things that I use regularly, which are emergency contacts. So these are the people to contact if something happens to me. So my partner is my mom. That's it. The list of allergies that I use all the time because I can't remember the names of some of the medications I'm allergic to. The current medication log, just making sure it's updated, which is annoying, honestly.
That's one of
And then like basic diagnoses and history.
immunization records is included, insurance
Yeah.
cards.
Basic diagnoses and
I volunteer with wildlife, so I have a card somewhere in here that says like, hey, if I'm showing some weird symptoms, it might be one of these diseases
it
from
might be
a
rabies.
raccoon. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sorry. So to make things more accessible and less annoying, I found that if I put holes on the ends of the binder, and they line up like this, then can install like 2 carabiners through these holes, and then attach the cordage of your choice, and then carry it around your shoulder or, across
Yeah.
chest or whatever. So, your hands are free rather than, having this like this, right? So
That's
I
a great
found,
idea.
yeah, I found that it works for me. And as far as putting the holes in the binder, you can use like a standard 50 sheet hole punch, the 3-hole punch. They'll go through the material, which is basically on this Wilson Jones binder is vinyl and cardboard. So it will punch through the required holes to make something like this.
I have one of these like fancy zip up ones. I think it was like 15 bucks on Amazon. It has an extension too that you can add, which makes it kind of like a purse. So that kind of like is a similar idea where you can like have it over your shoulder and not have to. I also kind of hold it like a briefcase. Yeah,
I do not do that because I drop things.
there.
And I have dropped the binder before and exploded paper on everybody. So it goes in a bag separately by itself where it can be contained if I drop it down a flight of stairs, which is a thing I've done before. So full disclosure, like finding a way of carrying it around that works for you. Also, honestly, sometimes my partners just carry it for me when I'm going to the doctor and I don't have the arm strength. So there's many different ways. People do make digital versions of these as well. I am bad at using digital binders. I can never find things fast that way. That is probably just because I'm like a little outdated in my technology abilities, if I'm being completely
I
honest.
just forget passwords for things too much. And I
Also
feel like that makes it less accessible.
Yeah, and please, if you do make an online one, make sure that it's on a private device and password protected probably, because this can be pretty sensitive information.
One aside before I forget, since this panel is tailored towards like trans and non-binary people, one thing that could be helpful to include if you've changed your name is your name change form. I don't know about some of you, but a lot of my documentation is from before my name change, and even my insurance company like doesn't think I existed before that. So that might be important to carry just to prove that it's still you.
Yeah, I also, in the state of Colorado, you can get an extra disability pass for your car. When you get one, you can get a second one. If you list, and I keep one of those in here in case I need to get picked up by somebody. That way then I can just have it. Which is another piece. If like me, you have mobility issues, that can be really helpful. So there's a number of different ways you can use this for everyday life as well. Yeah. And yes, I know we're jumping around a lot. Other questions? I see a couple people off mute, so I want to give an opportunity. It's also fine. People can be off mute without needing to ask a question. Cool. Effectively, you will find in the binder sheet section of that Google Doc piece in those like bundles, you'll find a lot of different kind of trackers and pieces like that. I do not use any trackers. Some people find them really helpful, especially when they're in the process of getting diagnosed. Most of the things I am going to use are like just about medications, insurance, medical contacts, medical history. But if that is helpful for you, I believe between everything we've provided you with, there's sleep trackers, pain trackers, medication trackers, symptom trackers of various type, all kinds of blood pressure, blood sugar, blood, etc. trackers.
Side effect trackers for medications, and there's on there
Side
too.
effects, yeah.
I added some stuff earlier today. Mind going back out so I can remember. The Aspire one is like it's made by an organization for autistic people, but I thought it was super helpful because it kind of like helps like prepare for an appointment. I also included the form for the state of Colorado for medical directives. That is something that I wish I had done before my emergent situation. So I thought it might be nice to include for everyone else. And then there's just some other like planning tools. I used to do like my medical planning before appointments in my notes app on my phone, which was also great because I could kind of like update it as I went. So that would be an example of maybe a digital version of it. But these are more structured, which could be really helpful.
Also, as a note, we have at this point talked, I think, a fair bit more about like physical health, but this can be really helpful for emotional health as well. When I was going to therapy regularly, which I am only not doing right now because I moved and finding a new therapist is a lot of effort. But effectively, I have emotional wellness plans, things like that, that are made by a number of different places. These are really designed as like things to bring with you to an appointment in certain ways. I would say like a lot of these things can also be used for that emotional wellness kind of checklist piece here, like that sleep tracker. One of my partners uses because they have depression, not because they have physical ailments that interfere with their sleep. So these things are also much more broad than maybe the context I'm using them in or that Ray is using them in as well. So keeping in mind, right, that these things will also work for neurodivergencies and mental health as well. Both Ray and I assume that this is okay to share since you sort of briefly brought it up, are neurodivergent. Both of us have had multiple issues with that in like healthcare settings, which is part of why this is a helpful tool because it keeps you organized and like less stressed. And for me, if I get really, really stressed out and overstimulated by a new environment, I can forget what I'm there for, which is not helpful when you're trying to explain what you need from a doctor.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love most about this is like I'm autistic, communication's already very difficult, and I'm very in my head about whether I'm communicating properly. And then I suffered a brain injury last year. And so now I have a cognitive communication disorder. So this like helps me prepare for appointments and like know what's important and then also just remember the timeline of events. Because sometimes that can get really like confusing and overwhelming to remember. In regards to like neurodivergence and mental health, other things that you might consider including, I have my care team listed in here and their contact information, which could be great, and an example of like maybe you need emergent care and you want your therapist contacted so they know where you are. I also have my emotional support animal letter in here.
I have my license for my service animal. And also a letter from my doctor saying I can't do stairs, just in case it's relevant. So you can also keep those kinds of pieces in there. I have a special section for them that's just kind of miscellaneous in a way, of just things that I need in case somebody questions why I am doing something. Just because also it gets people to be quiet and leave me alone, which is also helpful. I don't always only use this with the medical team, but if I go, actually, I'm there for a reason and bring out a giant binder, people leave you alone because they don't want to talk to you anymore, which is sometimes the goal for me.
Perfect. People
It's
repellent.
really great if someone yells at you for parking in disability and they don't think you look disabled enough, even though you're using a mobility aid, which I do. It can be nice because it can just shut people down a little bit. Nobody's gonna question you if you're like, actually, my documents, which works. I don't like people yelling at me in public. It makes me deeply uncomfortable. I don't know anyone that likes it, but I handle it really bad. And so it gives me like a security blanket almost of something that I can be like, if it's questioned, I can just deal with it.
That was the wording I was thinking of too.
Yeah.
I was like, I haven't had to use it in that situation so far, knock on wood, thank goodness. But yeah, it's like a security blanket. It makes you, I don't know, I practice conversations in my head for all of the potential horrible things that could happen. And it's nice to have this as like a backup because I know that I have that in my toolkit if that were to happen.
One thing I will also share, if you happen to be a parent and you're here with us today, make one of these for your kid, even if they don't have anything happening with them that's complicated yet, just make one. A lot of daycares and stuff like that ask for these anyways, but also it's really helpful if like there's an extended relative taking care of them or they go to summer camp and then you just already have it made. I know I made a lot of these for my youngest sibling and just for the activities she was doing, and that way then I didn't get a phone call every 20 minutes from like a camp counselor being like, we don't know what they're allergic to, which is super valid. But that kind of thing can also just be helpful, and then your kids also see it and can expand on it and then take on more of their own medical care as they become a teenager, and kind of aren't starting from scratch as a college student, because a lot of the students I work with are starting from scratch and are really lost. So finding a way to help ease that transition for your kiddo, I think is also really helpful. And I've had a number of friends do this. I did it for my youngest sibling and cousins. And that can be really, really handy. So also if there's young people in your life, you can do this for other humans as well.
I didn't include this in the Google Drive, and if there's an interest in it, like please let me know in the chat. But I found a lot of resources too on transition planning for like young adults who have disabilities, who maybe like are transitioning to you know, managing their own care, or they're moving off to college. Those could be like really good resources to use too in building the binder for them.
Yeah, for parents, should they include a section that discusses sensory issues, things that calm their child's interests, etc.? Yeah, why not? Honestly, your children probably, hopefully, do not have this much to put in it, because they haven't been alive long enough to need this much, I hope. Ideally. Right. And I think sensory issues and interests and like calming tactics, or like even just some general parenting things that you want people to know, like about how much sugar they eat, right? I think can be really helpful, even if like your kid's going to a sleepover, right? Because I know a lot of my younger siblings and cousins who had friends that came over, I would hear this big list from their parents or something, and then I would not be able to remember it. So having that just as a basic is kind of helpful. You can even laminate it and like stick it to a sleeping bag if you want. Like there's a lot of different ways to do this that I'm sure parents have come up with amazing things. But yeah, I think sensory issues, especially if your kid struggles with over or under stimulation, or with like having meltdowns, right? I think that that's never a bad idea.
And 2 or 3 of the resources I included under the binder sheet section, they're a little bit more adult focused, but it's a similar concept where it does include things that are like, this is how it's best to communicate with me. These are things that calm me down. You know, keep like X, Y, and Z in mind. So there are definitely templates out there for things like that. I do see one hand up currently. Maya, do you want to unmute yourself or drop your question in the chat?
I just figured I would raise my hand so that I could interrupt. I kind of wanted to ask about, because Sonja, you had kind of mentioned people getting into this new, and I'm not new to this. I've been trying to get a diagnosis for 10 years. I had one, then they took it away. And I know I need to make one of these, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I also struggle with depression and anxiety, and trying to actually do it has been hard. And so I was wondering if you kind of have any advice on getting started.
I do. I am not the best at executive functioning as a human, and I live with 2 partners who also aren't the best at it. And one of whom is also disabled like me. So to be perfectly honest with you, I will just set an appointment for us to do it together. So find a friend, make them sit with you.
Or you could do it on Zoom, like a co-working
Or
session.
yeah.
To be frank, mine took me like 4 months to put this together because I just like incrementally did it. And it was hard to be nice to myself that it wasn't even close to done the entire time. But a little bit of progress is better than not working on it. And so that can also be something you implement. It's like, hey, I know that I have half an hour of energy today for this. I'll plan to get this one section done this week. That sort of thing, like set smaller goals for yourself that feel more attainable. I'm sure a lot of us in the room have heard of like SMART goals, things like that.
I will say this too, if you have people in your life that you trust you can ask them to make it for you. You can send this and be like, please make one for me. I can't. Because once you have it in front of you, it's easier to be able to, at least for me, sit down and edit it, because it's a thing that I know already exists. So it feels less daunting. It feels less hard to go through and sit down and edit it than it did to like initially put it together. To initially put it together, honestly, I think the only thing that prompted that to happen was pure and utter like shame, which is really helpful in some ways, which is that I told enough people in my life I was going to make one that after a while, not having one became embarrassing for me, which is not like a great system, but it works fairly consistently for me. That I don't necessarily recommend this. But that is how mine happened. But my partners honestly got made because I just started them one. I just got a binder. I put dividers that were labeled in it. I printed some stuff out and I said, here is the beginning. And that really helped for them. So there's a number of different things you can do. And I've done this for like my sibling as well.
One of the things that helped me break it down into like more manageable chunks, before I even bought the binder and sat down and started printing a bunch of things, I created a note in my notes app and I started thinking of all the different sections I would want and like different things that I would want under the section. And I just kept opening that notes app every few days whenever I had the spoons and started adding things like, okay, yeah, I want to print off this specific note. And that helped a lot because some of my providers don't use a really nice medical like notes management system, so I had to email some people, and it helped organize it into like I need to do X, Y, and Z as opposed to feeling like this huge like undefined task that I somehow had to conquer in one sitting.
One thing I'll also say too, if the printing part is the part that you're getting stuck on, I am happy to print things for you. If you're ever around the C4C, I will print stuff. I do not care. We have a certain amount of free printing I can do for students anyways. I have a lot of the stuff from at least my medical bundle, just ambiently already printed in my office too. So that is an option if you want. And I am here most days. 9 to 5. So if it is easier for you to come visit somebody compared to print things, because I know that printing is where I get stuck a lot, especially when I was a student. And also for sure when I didn't have like a regular office I sat in that had access to a printer easily. And I don't ever use my home printer. I'll be real with you. I don't even think I can turn it on. It's theoretical for me. My partners use it. I don't. It's not a thing. Right. That is something I'm more than happy to offer as like a help aid. And there's a number of other kind of places that you can likely get help with that as well, kind of in town and with other people. But certainly you are welcome to come chat with me. I mean, the Center for Inclusion and Social Change does have 10 free pages of printing for students. Not that we're super paying attention a lot of the time. And we are open 8 to 7 p.m. most weekdays. I think almost all weekdays, with some occasional exceptions to the rule, mostly when there's like big events that we all need to help with. But for the most part, that is also a resource that is available to you. I'm sorry, I'm looking at where I keep that printed out stuff in my office to see if there's anything else. I think I also have a number of like general self-care wellness things kind of in my office as well. So, and I'm happy to print anything else we've put in the Google Drive easily. I'm also happy if you email me stuff, I can print that too. It's not a problem. I'm happy to do it because honestly, it's my job, more or less.
Thank you, that's cool. And yeah, I guess also one thing that kind of you suggested, and I'll just throw it out there because I'm clearly in a group of other disabled people who maybe also don't have a binder. I have found it helpful to like work together, and if anybody else is also in that position and would like to DM me, and maybe we can meet up at the C4C or something like that, and kind of even just kind of getting started on it together, I would be very happy to hear from you.
Yeah. Something else I can, oh no, sorry, I'm trying to type in my email in the chat and it went incredibly bad there briefly. The oh no was, I promise, not related to you. My email's in the chat now. But I often have students and honestly other staff members as well come into my office and just mirror work because I have a really nice big couch and a little table and stuff. And I am always happy to do that as long as I'm not in a meeting. That is the only time that I will kick you out. Really, because it doesn't bother me at all. I am not easily dissuaded from what I'm doing. Thankfully that hyper focus is strong. But also we I do a program that is largely, I would say, primarily neurodivergent focused. Not maybe intentionally, but that's what it is now. Every single Friday in the center lobby from 1:30 to 3:30 called Queer Cheer. And I am always there during that time period. And I am always happy to help. And we have activities kind of like, I call them kindergarten crafts for adults. But you can also use that time to work on these other pieces too, and probably find other people that would be interested. Just because of the vibe of the space. I don't know how to explain that better. If you come, the program's called Queer Cheer. I'll put this in the chat as well. You'll get that fairly quickly, but it is really very friendly towards this, and it is open for everybody at any time. You don't need to stay there the whole time, but it's like a 2-hour block that just, I'm guaranteed to be sitting in the lobby to talk to you about whatever the fuck you want. I for sure have nothing else happening. I think you've been, right? Haven't you?
I was-
remember.
No, I think I had a doctor's appointment.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. Please chat with each other, and you're welcome to manage that in the chat. I will ignore things that are not for us. But happy to help. And if you ever need a space for that, let me know. I can likely help you get one somewhere on campus. Or in the C4C if you don't want to test your luck with weather tech or the weather. Other questions?
Do emergency personnel know to look in your binder if you lose consciousness, for example?
Emergency personnel like EMTs, no. However, if I have a giant binder labeled medical binder with me, it's not unlikely that they'll open it. Thankfully, I haven't been in the position where no one around me has known. But I also take steps to make sure that my coworkers know about this and also what to do so they don't have to call 911, because it's expensive. Full disclosure, it's really expensive. But I do like update in my life with this kind of information. So where I work, I loop in the people that I'm regularly around. That includes a few of my coworkers, our office kind of assistant, my student employees, and my boss at bare minimum. The people I work with regularly and often know about this. And then obviously my partners, most of my close friends, any friend that I would hang out with by myself, for example. And then also like my members for sure know about it. At least my immediate family members or the ones I visit often. I am also not by myself very much because I can't drive anymore and I don't really walk around a ton. So the only place that I'm regularly by myself is on a bus. And thankfully nothing bad has happened in that scenario yet. But my guess is honestly, like I usually only have like my small purse and then my large work bag with me. They'll probably find it because they do go through your stuff to like see your ID, and usually oftentimes they will call people if they can on your phone from your emergency contacts, which by the way, if you can set that up on your phone, you should, because that means that EMS workers can access it. And that has happened to me before where they have called my partner via the emergency kind of thing that you can do without unlocking a phone, which is really helpful if you're in like a car accident, for example. Yeah.
With that, I think there's a section under the emergency contacts thing that they can open on the phone where you can add medical notes.
Mhm.
So you could add a note like look at binder that's in backpack. Or if you wanted, you could also maybe, since we're trying to like expand on a medical bracelet, you could still maybe have a medical bracelet that says like there's important information in this. If you're concerned. It's definitely very helpful when you have other people around you who are aware of it. But yeah, you can take those steps to try to direct them towards it.
I also keep a card in my wallet right behind my ID. So if they take out my ID, they have to see it, that says where my medical binder is and also some basic info. Which is also really easy to print on like a little piece of cardstock at a FedEx. It cost maybe 10 cents for me to do. And that was like me just doing it on an automated printer they had open, which is, I think, more expensive than if you talk to a person. So yeah, it's not real hard. You can also get pre-made ones on Etsy, on most medical websites of any kind as well. You can also get templates for free from most different medical websites as well for those. And that is much more useful for me as someone who wears typically a lot of hand braces. I'm not wearing them today because I have a wound where they rub, so I'm being smart. But I can't wear those bracelets because they get tangled with the brace. So like there are lots of options. There are also like dog tag type medical necklaces. This is not one, this is just a necklace. I'm just holding it as an example. So you can use whatever you feel most comfortable with in that kind of avenue. I don't carry tons of stuff with me when I'm by myself, especially. So having something that's just labeled medical binder usually would probably work as well. So it's a mix. It's whatever makes you feel most secure.
This is a semi-related tangent. When I was looking for resources, I saw some printouts too for cards that say like, I speak ASL, or this is my native language. I imagine there are ones that exist that are like, I am nonverbal, or I can go nonverbal, that you could use in situations where like maybe there's a communication barrier, and you need assistance.
They also do that for Braille as well, which is great. And then a number, and they'd use it for all sign language pieces too. So British Sign Language as well will also have those kinds of cards. So yeah, and I have cards that I have gotten my family members that say that they speak Spanish only. And that's really helpful because usually people on emergency teams do have someone to translate. So that is an option for you as well. I have a card, honestly, full disclosure, in my wallet that says that I am multilingual and that I probably am not going to speak like in a way that makes sense to a lot of people, but that I promise I'm not having a stroke in my wallet just in case. It's worded much better than that. But effectively it boils down to, I promise I'm not having a stroke. I am struggling to translate in my brain. Into English, which is the primary language I speak in the current city I live in. Yeah. And then Patricia, I don't know if that's just a reaction or a hand version, but yes.
Just a reaction. Thank you, Sonja.
Yeah, no problem. Because yeah, I'll be real with you. And if you've seen me long enough, you'll know that this is true. Yeah, absolutely. I am gonna go ahead and skip our kind of like assertiveness skills slide, because I think we're getting down on time. Is that correct?
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we could maybe do a TLDR of it.
Yeah, the TLDR is effectively like be direct, speak as calmly as you can, as steadily as you can, focusing on clarity. Those are the kind of best tips that work for the most people, the most frequently. But this is adapted from a kind of module called The Power of Your Voice by Crystal Middlestat. It is limited, but it's a good place to start if you're struggling with standing up for yourself, just kind of in general. Medically, it looks a lot different, but we wanted to at least get for that piece.
We don't have the screen.
Yeah, I know that you
Oh.
don't have it. I am trying to get it to go and struggle with my laptop. There we go. I think you should have it now. But yeah, this is kind of that basic list. You'll notice that I really just talked about these three. Oops, sorry. I cannot use a computer right now, apparently. This is really just those second through fourth bullet points are the most helpful. The rest, it kind of depends on the context and your own identities a little more.
Yeah, I think one of the points that I drive home is like focus more on being factual than emotions, because that can either, you know, if you're too emotional and specific, like if you're too anxious, that can be taken as like neurotic. If you're too angry, that can be a different direction. It's annoying that we have to suppress our human emotions when we talk to doctors, but that is like one thing that can be helpful is being very factual, while also somehow managing to not be a robot. It feels like a balancing act at times.
And then just a reminder for those of you, especially who are socialized femme, or with a lot of femininity, you are not obligated to be polite when it is a matter of your personal safety. It's not the most important thing, I promise. And on that note, I'm gonna leave the last 3 minutes for any further questions or comments. Thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.